So we've come up with some theories, but it's no good coming up with theories that say that original consciousness created the world unless you can have some idea how that happened. So let's suppose you're an original consciousness and you want to create a universe. So before there's anything, then there's basically just a consciousness, which is sort of like a mind, but there's no space and time, no extension or anything. So you have to go from the conceptual realm to the actual realm. So then I tend to think of God as sort of narrowing down this whole consciousness to a singularity or a single point. So before the original consciousness creates, then it consists of essentially a single point, but potentially that contains in potential infinity, every single point in the universe. So then what you have to think of what you want to create. So the idea is that you want to create separated beings, right? You don't want everybody to be you. You want people to have and you want actually not just people, because it's everything. If everything has some measure of internal nature or consciousness, then everything is making choices. So that you want everything to be separate, but you're not separate, right? There is no separation within God. God is like unity. Original consciousness is one united consciousness. So it is the idea of the other that gives this concept of separateness. So separateness translates into space. So if I am here and you are there, there's a space between us. So then in conceiving of the other, God conceives of space. So how do you make space? So there's lots of different ways lots of different spaces actually. There's spaces have different dimensionalities. So a single space would be just a line. A two-dimensional space would be a plane. A three-dimensional space is pretty much what we live in, essentially. But there's many dimensionalities. So this being who is other than God is also in a separate realm from original consciousness or God. So it has to be a finite realm. So this makes it too big for God to sort of come in and have control over, have direct control over. I'm sure God could just wipe it all out, but basically God did not design it in the sense of wanting complete control over it, right? So this is a realm that is finite. So in order to sort of give the responsibility for individual creation to everything in this created realm, then original consciousness creates a realm that is unlike itself in the sense of being finite. So we have we live in a manifold, right? So we call a space like a space. We call that a manifold, right? So how do we see separation expressed in the nature of the physical world? So that is actually the particle. That's why things have to be particles, because they have to be separate from each other. This whole realm is a separated realm. They have to be separate. So everything has to have a particle nature. If you have a particle here and a particle here, there is separation between them. But there is also the expression of the original oneness. So everything also participates in a wave nature. A wave is more like from a field, right? Waves are associated with fields, like electric waves associated with electric fields. So the wave nature of everything expresses the universal oneness. So it's still there to some degree. So we've just come up with space, we've called that, we've translated our idea of the other into a separation, into space. But there's another thing, another whole reason why the universe is created, which is growth, right? So over the aeons, then evolution occurs. So the particles eventually join up into atoms, and we have all the different elements formed in the stars, and then the stars blow up, and we have galaxies formed, and so on. Right? So there is a change. Everything evolves. Nothing is created in its final form in the physical world. Remember, even particles are making choices. So that means there's another separation involved here. The separation from me as a baby to me as an adult. And that separation allows for growth, right? So that separation, and God conceives of as time. So now we have a manifold which has space and time. And each of those express some fundamental design of the universe. So those two things are the most important to the other creation of the other being, and allowing that being to evolve through making individual choices. Now, God is actually, I don't know if God's able to intervene or not, but God didn't create everything with the, with the intention of dabbling here and there and changing things. So instead, that responsibility is given to everything in the universe. But of course, the degree of responsibility, I think, gets greater as you go further along. So I would say the greatest responsibility for co-creation obviously is going to belong to the human, because the human is able to express much more of the nature of original consciousness. Okay, that's enough for now.